Greetings, YouTube. The Doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And this is the remastered Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And today I want to talk about poison and how poison works in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the remastered Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and particularly about the Toxicologist and how poisons work with the Toxicologist, which is a subclass of the Alchemist. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a question or comment. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. All right, so first off, we have the page on Afflictions from the Player Core 1 book. Remember, there are two Player Core books, Player Core 1 and Player Core 2. This is from Player Core 1. And curses, poisons, and diseases basically all fall under the same kind of base set of rules. And then poisons deviate from that a little bit with some extra rules that come into effect. So let's take a look first at this. So we've got a name and a trait, and then there is a saving throw. So when you're first exposed to an affliction, and with this you just substitute the word poison for affliction, you must attempt a saving throw. The first attempt to stave off the affliction is called the initial saving throw. An affliction usually requires a fortitude save, and all poisons require a fortitude save. But the exact save and DC, they vary from one to the next. And there's a whole big giant list of poisons. We're going to look at some of those. So on a successful save, it's done. You're not affected at all. On a failed, however, you immediately go to whatever the first stage is. So with poisons, there's usually 3 stages, and it lasts for a certain number of rounds, and we'll get to that. But you immediately go to stage 1, and you are subjected to the listed effect. On a critical failure, you go to stage 2. Now, some afflictions have onset times, and almost all poisons, I think, have an onset time. And I think the minimum for the poison is 1 round. So for those afflictions, for these afflictions, and what they're saying is for these afflictions that have an onset time, once you fail your initial save, you don't gain the effects for the first stage. So if you fail that save, you're stage 1. If you critically fail your save, you're stage 2. But you don't get those effects until the first onset time is. So let's say you as a character get stabbed by a poison dagger from an enemy. Let's say it's an enemy thug. Okay, so the thug stabs you with a dagger, and the dagger has poison on it, and the poison that's on the dagger has an onset time of 1 round. You make a save right then and there. Let's say you fail it, so you go to stage 1, but there's an onset time of 1 round, which means at the beginning of that thug's next turn, you immediately hit the stage 1. And then at the end of that, you make another saving throw. And if you fail that saving throw, and that's where the stages come in, so we'll talk about that. But if you fail that saving throw, you go to the next stage. So if an affliction, so maximum duration, if an affliction lasts only a limited amount of time, it lists the maximum duration. I believe the maximum duration for most poisons is 6 rounds. So you can go to stage 3, and then it'll last for 3 more rounds after that. So it ends at the end of 6 rounds. So if you're still alive after that amount of time, then more power to you. So poisons have stages. So do most diseases and or curses. So an affliction, insert the word poison, typically has multiple stages, each of which lists an effect followed by an interval or a parentheses. When you reach a given stage, you are subjected to the list for that stage. At the end of the stage's listed interval, you must attempt a new saving throw. So you got stabbed by the thug. You failed your save, and this is on the thug's turn. You failed your save, which means you go to stage 1. And on the beginning of the thug's next turn, you immediately get the effects of stage 1. And once those effects happen, you have to make a new saving throw. On a success, you reduce the stage by 1. So if you were stage 1 and you made your saving throw, you go to stage 0, and it's done. It's over with. If you fail, you go to stage 2. And the next round you get all the effects of stage 2 at the beginning of that thug's next turn, and then you make another saving throw, and if you fail, you go to stage 3, and so on and so forth. So you are subject to the effects of the new stage. If the affliction stage is ever reduced below 0, then it ends, and we've already talked about. On a failure, you increase by 1 stage. On a crit failure, you increase by 2 stages, and then you're subjected to that. So you need to keep that in mind. And then there's damage, and a lot of these poisons have conditions that go along with them as well. So like clumsy and stupefied and enfeebled and slow and flat-footed. So the damage, any damage listed for a stage happens immediately, and then conditions affect you when you reach the stage and last for the duration. So, for instance, if you're drained for an affliction which has a maximum duration of 5 minutes, the drain condition still happens because drains don't go away until you've had a full rest. So a condition that automatically changes its value or ends under circumstances like frightened still does so. So frightening, you go frightened 2, the next round you go to frightened 1, and so forth and so on. So, okay, this is where poisons deviate a bit from the overall rule set of afflictions. So you can get multiple exposures of poisons. So multiple exposures of the same curse or disease currently affecting you have no effect. However, for a poison, if you are exposed to the same poison again, the initial saving throw against the new exposure increases the stage by 1. So it says, for poison, however, failing the initial saving throw against the new exposure increases the stage by 1. So let's say you got stabbed by that thug and you failed your save. So now you are stage 1. At the beginning, and you fail your save, so you're stage 1. At the beginning of the thug's next turn, you take the effects of stage 1, you fail your saving throw, you're stage 2, and he stabs you again with the same poison, and you fail you have to make a save immediately because of the exposure, and you fail your save, you immediately go to stage 3 on the next turn. So this is true even if you're within the poison's onset period, though it doesn't change the onset length. If the poison does not have an onset time or it's already elapsed, you are immediately subjected to the effects of the new stage. So because there is an onset time, there is that. So that's kind of the base rules for poison. So let's take a look at the next thing. They give us an affliction example here, which is Arsenic. Now, this is not my favorite one. It's not the best because this thing has a really long onset time, and these will probably never come up with players using poisons, whereas these may come up with the DM using poisons against the player, and they use Arsenic. So, Arsenic has a saving throw of 18. It has an onset time of 10 minutes. So you get exposed, you fail your save, you go to stage 1, and 10 minutes later, stage 1 happens. It's a maximum duration of 5 minutes. So stage 1 happens, and you take 1d4 points of damage, and you're sickened 1 for a minute. So that's the onset time between the stage 1 and stage 2. So, and then so on and so forth. I wish they would have used something like Black Adder poison, which is an injury poison. So this is not an injury poison. This is a ingestion poison. So it says if you drank a glass of wine laced with arsenic, you would fail an initial saving throw for that. If you fail, you advance to stage 1. Because of the onset time, nothing happens for 10 minutes. But once this passes, you take 1d4 poison damage and become sickened 1. That's stage 1. As noted, you're unable to reduce the sickened condition because it says that you're unable to reduce the sickened condition in the first sentence. The interval of stage 1 is 1 minute, as shown in parentheses. So you attempt a new saving throw. As soon as you get the effects of stage 1, you get a new saving throw. And then, let's say you fail it. So a minute later, you go to stage 2, and then a minute later, the effects of stage 2 happen. And if you fail that save, you take the damage, you're sickened 2, and you make another saving throw. Let's say you fail that one, so that means you advance to stage 3. And a minute later, you take 2d6 poison damage, and you're sickened 3. So so it says in the next paragraph, if your initial save against the arsenic was critical failure, After the onset time, you would advance directly to stage 2. So after 10 minutes, you go directly to stage 2. And remember, you're sickened, which means that's a penalty to all your saving throws. So if you reach stage 3 of the poison, either by failing while at stage 2 or critically failing while at stage 1, you take 2d6 and be sickened 3. If you failed critically on your saving throw at stage 3, you would repeat the effects of stage 3. So really, once you hit stage 3, it doesn't matter if you fail or you critically fail. It can't go any further than that. And then it lasts for 5 minutes. So you get 5 of these saving throws because the onset time for each stage is a minute. All right. So now this is in the... So this last one was from the Player Core 1 again. This was on page 430. This is on page 431. This is from the GM core on page 248. So, like, stuff for the poisons is all over the place in these books, which is something I don't necessarily like. But they are there, and you just have to find them. And I had to go through here and, like, Control F, search for poison all over the place in these books. So this is in the items section of alchemical poisons. So the highlighted part I have here says applying alchemical poisons uses an interact action. A poison typically requires one hand to pour onto food or scatter in the air. Applying a poison to a weapon or another item requires 2 hands, with one hand holding the weapon or item. So basically you're holding the weapon in one hand and you're pouring the poison on with the other hand. That's why it requires 2 poisons. The usage entry for a poison indicates the number of hands needed for a typical means of application. And these poisons that are injury poisons, so you can see here like black adder venom is an injury poison. The interact action to apply the poison and activate it is 2 actions. So essentially you need 2 hands. So you can't, if you're holding a shield, you can't do this. So you have to have the poison in one hand, the weapon in the other hand. You'd use 2 actions, and it's going to be 3 actions if you don't have the poison out. So if you need to pull the poison out, that's an action, and then you use 2 actions to put it on. But once you've put it on, it's good until you actually hit something. So an injury poison, and we're going all the way down to the bottom where it says injury, right down here. So an injury poison is activated by applying it to a weapon or ammunition, and it affects the target of the first strike made using the poison item. If that strike is a success and deals piercing or slashing damage, the target must attempt a saving throw against the poison, just like we talked about. So the poison is good until you hit somebody. On a failed strike, the target is unaffected, but the poison remains on the weapon and you can try again. On a critical failure, or if the strike fails to deal slashing or piercing damage for some other reason, the poison is spent, but the target is unaffected. So if you critically fail, poison's gone. If you hit them with piercing or slashing and they make their save, the poison is still gone, but nothing happens. If you miss, then the poison stays there until you do those 2 things. So the poisons last literally forever. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is what it is. Okay, so black adder venom is a good example of an injury poison. It's a level 2 item. It requires 2 actions. Interact requires 2 hands to do. It's a DC 18 fortitude save. It has a maximum duration of 3 rounds, not 6, but 3. And so if you failed that initial saving throw, you would hit stage 1, which has an onset time of 1 round. So on the beginning of the next turn, you would get 1d4 poison damage. You'd make another saving throw. And if you failed, you go to stage 2. On the next round, you would take a d6 poison damage, and you'd make another saving throw. And if you failed, you go to stage 3, and you'd immediately take, on the next round, you would take 1d8 poison damage, and then it's done, because this is a 3-round poison. So that's essentially how these work. Now, there is something missing in this, and this has gotten changed. We're going to talk about this. So when the GM and the Player Core books came out, there was nothing in here that said that you could not add an infinite number of different poisons to a weapon. that has since changed, and we're going to talk about that. So, and then they go back and they direct us to page 430 of the player core to talk about afflictions. Okay, this is where it changed, and this is in the player core 2, but it also was errataed here this fall. So in the GM core, there was an errata this fall. The player core 2 didn't come out until August of this year, of 2024. And here it is right here. On 248, only one injury poison can be applied to a weapon or ammunition at a time. Okay? That was also placed in the alchemical poison section of the player core 2 on page 291. Says weapons and items can have only one poison applied to them at a time, even if those poisons have different methods of exposure. If a second poison is applied to an item, the lower level poison is removed. Okay, so, and then you choose randomly if they're the same level. So if we put 2 third level poisons on, then we would choose randomly which one would go on. But if you put a second level and a third level on, the third level would take effect, not the second level one. And then all the rest of the stuff that we talked about with the injury is the same. Black Adder Venom is exactly the same. So that one, doesn't change at all, except that you can only put one poison on a weapon at a time. All right. So for alchemy, and for an alchemist, the alchemist does have this subclass called the Toxicologist, and they get this field benefit. So you can apply an injury poison you're holding to a weapon or piece of ammunition you're wielding as a single action rather than a 2-action activity. Now remember, right here under Black Adder Venom says 2 actions to manipulate. Almost all of the injury poisons, I don't know any that don't have this, all have this 2-action to interact. With the Toxicologist, you only do 1 action. So if you got that poison out already, then you can apply it to your weapon with 1 action. You can only apply 1 poison at a time. In addition, you flexibly mix acid and poisonous alchemical compounds. Your infused poisons can affect creatures immune to poison. That's your infused poisons. So every day you have this advanced alchemy, and you get you can craft a number of alchemical items during your daily preparations equal to 4 plus your intelligence modifier. They all get the infused trait. So those particular items, so if you have an 18 intelligence, that's 8 that you can create. Those particular poisons count here for this acid poison. So things that are immune to poison are going to take, instead of taking poison in the listed stat block, they are going to take acid. So with Black Adder Venom, if this were an infused Black Adder Venom for a toxicologist, it would do 1d4 poison or acid damage, whichever can be done. Okay? And it does essentially both. What that means is if they are weak to acid damage, they're going to take more damage. And then there's a field vial thing and a few other things that you get. But that is very powerful. Now, one problem with quick alchemy that the alchemist has, and that is you can expend one of your versatile vials, and you get a number of versatile vials equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. So if it's an 18, you get 4 from your intelligence modifier. So you get 6 per day, and then you can get more from a 10-minute rest. So you can expend one of your versatile vials to create a single alchemical consumable item of your level of lore that's in your formula book. This item has the infused trait, but it remains potent only until the start of your next turn. So you do an action to create this, and then you have to do an action to apply it, and then it's only good until the start of your next turn. So if you don't have any actions left, it's gone. Basically, it won't last. So that is an issue with quick alchemy. But the alchemist does have a particular ability. We're going to go through all this called Enduring Alchemy. That's a feat at 4th level. And you can overcome that by taking this feat. And so when you use Quick Alchemy to create an alchemical tool or elixir, that tool or elixir remains potent until the end of your next turn, instead of losing its potency. So there you go. Okay. All right. So in addition, there is the Blowgun Poisoner. You can capably deliver toxins with a blowgun. Your blowgun strikes can apply injury poisons even if they deal no damage due to a creature's resistance. So if you critically succeed at a blowgun strike using a poison dart, the target's initial save against the poison is 1 degree success worse than the creature's rolls. So if you critically succeed, it'll go from basically to stage 2. If you make a blowgun strike while hidden, you remain undetected. So even if you do no damage, like let's say that they are resistant to piercing damage, you still are going to apply your poisons. And if you critically hit, then it goes right to stage 2. And if you're hidden, you don't automatically become observed if you use this. So that's a pretty good feat to get as well. Another good feat is the Alchemical Familiar, because you can get a familiar that has manual dexterity that can hand you things or hold things. So here are some of the familiar abilities, and the one I am particularly talking about, and your familiar has the pet, and the one I am talking about here is this one called manual dexterity right here. And that is also a prerequisite for a few of these other ones, like item delivery. So if your familiar is adjacent to you, you can command it to deliver an item. Instead of the normal 2 actions, your familiar interacts with the thing and gives it to you. Now, you have to command a familiar. That's a problem. But there is an independent ability, too, that you can get later on for your familiar that allows it to just take an action without you telling it what to do. So it can deliver items to you. And then Familiar Master is a pretty good archetype to get. So if you've got that alchemical familiar, you get the Enhanced Familiar feat, which is not on page 53. That's a typo. And eventually you can get Improved Familiar and Incredible Familiar, which are pretty good. Some of the later feats for the Alchemist are not great, so that's why those are pretty good. Eventually, you can get a Homunculus, which is a porter, and it has a blood link. And the important thing about the Homunculus is it also can have a poison reservoir. So your familiar has a reservoir of poison, allowing you to apply an injury poison to an adjacent ally's exposed weapon. So all great stuff. I actually have a Alchemist Toxicologist who has a blowgun. He is awesome, and he is 5th level right now, and he's got a whole bunch of different poisons, and I can apply many different poisons to you, and I can apply damage from them. So he basically does virtually almost no damage with his blowgun, but he does do quite a bit of damage with the poisons, and a lot of different debuffs. He can make you flat-footed. He can enfeeble you. He can make you sick. He can make you clumsy. He can make you stupid. So a lot of really great things that can use. And I would think that getting somebody flat-footed and getting somebody sickened or frightened is a good thing with these, because it allows a penalty to those saving throws, because fortitude saves are actually pretty easy to make in Pathfinder 2. All right, that is what I have for everybody today. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.